Hello, everybody. So in this episode, we have the lovely Nova with us, and she will explain to you what she does. But it's going to be a very powerful episode, I think, because this is a common goal for all of us mums, isn't it? We all want our children to step into their own power, reach their potential. That's what we want. That's our sign of being successful mums. So, Nova, would you like to tell us a little bit about what it is you do?
Okay, so my official title is a psychotherapist. So that's kind of the training that I've had and the route that I've gone down. But developing on that, because I also wanted to, I suppose, expand upon the model that I learnt, which is fairly rigid and fairly sort of not necessarily in line with a lot of the new stuff that we're learning now. So I developed my own model, which is called Positive Potential, because it's all about helping people move towards something that's more positive. And that can be anything from the way that they're thinking, the way that they're acting, the things that they're doing. So it helps them take better action towards business and life, but also just expands upon their thinking so that they can get a better idea of why they've gone down this route and how they can change it in the future and do something different. So it's not just like positive thinking, because that's such a massive thing. It's a structure to improve your life.
Okay, so with regards to our kids, this is going to help them stop feeling overwhelmed, stuck, out of control, that sort of thing. So they're going to feel more empowered.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all about handing it back to them and realizing that they are their own person. They have their own thoughts. They have their own way of viewing the world. And that we are a holding space for them so that we can help them explore that safely. That's kind of how I see our role as parents, is being a safe place for children to explore what's going on for them.
Love that. Yeah, definitely. Okay, so what is the methodology that you use?
Okay, well, it's a 7-step structure basically, and it's all based around this idea of a spiral shape, so it makes it a little bit more tangible for people. So if you imagine that we are at the moment on somewhere along the spiral, and as we go through life, the things that happen to us and the things that we're thinking and the things that we're doing often repeat themselves. So they'll repeat. You might go through a similar kind of thought process every time you come across a similar situation. But what we want to try and do, instead of being caught up in a cycle that's just like a coil shape, so that each repetition is exactly the same, what we want to do each time is expand upon that slightly. So every time we come back to a new situation that feels the same as something we've been in before. So if you take the example of a relationship, and you have the same relationship with loads of different people. So every time you're in a new relationship, you go through the same problems, you have the same thought processes, you have the same arguments. It doesn't matter who it's with. So what we want to do is try and expand upon that. Oh, just dropped my book. So that each time you come back to a similar situation, you're experiencing it from a higher perspective and a wider experience. So you're never quite repeating it. You're always expanding and you're always growing. That's the basic kind of idea. And then within that, there are 7 areas that we cover that are shown and proven scientifically in the psychology world to be the most important areas that you need to address to make any change.
Okay, I like that. So it's all about evolving, using a similar experience as a way to expand, a way to evolve, a way to better ourselves. So nothing ever goes to waste.
Yeah, absolutely. Because on so many levels, that's exactly what happens. I mean, as a society, we tend to go through these cycles. On an individual level, we'll go through these cycles. You'll see it repeated in politics. You'll see it repeated in different countries. We all go through the cycles. But what we don't want is to just stay in that. We want to constantly evolve. So that's the basic premise. Yeah, definitely. Always expanding.
Okay, fab. So you've mentioned increasing positivity. What do you actually mean by that?
For me, positivity, I don't really like the idea of positive and negative, but people know what it means essentially. So it's a good way of kind of pointing them in the direction of what I'm trying to expand upon, really. But for me, positivity is simply the idea of moving towards what you do want and away from what you don't want. So any positive move would be towards what your personal idea of what you want is. It doesn't necessarily have to be the positivity that everybody else expects or that anyone else expects. It's what you personally feel drives you forward. That's how I see it.
Yeah, lovely. And as I say to my kids, it's what makes you feel good. That's a positive thing.
Yeah.
You feel good. And as you say, that's different for different people. So yeah, I really like that. Okay. So what is the point?
Sorry.
Go on.
Sorry. No, I was just going to say that I just add to that as well, because there is certainly feeling good is part of it. But also there is sort of like, particularly with children, when we install that idea of whatever feels good, for a child, sometimes what feels good is not necessarily something that is still driving them forward. Sometimes feeling good is staying comfortable. So
yes.
You don't necessarily want to always stay comfortable. Feeling good can be just falling into habitual patterns. That feels good. What feels good is what we know. So it's also a case of what feels good, but also what moves you forward, because it might be that you have to put in a lot of hard work, or it might be that you go through a breakthrough period that doesn't feel that good at the time, but it's the after effect that you want. So you go through that pain period to reach the other side. So positivity can still involve feeling for a while like it's not so great, but that's still an important part of the process.
Right. Okay. So with this, it's more about positive momentum. It's about going forwards. Okay. Lovely. Yeah. So what is the point in increasing positivity in our children's lives?
I think because so many children are under a huge amount of pressure now. There's a lot of things coming in. They're constantly surrounded by information. They don't necessarily know how to pick and choose what they take on board. We don't know necessarily what their thinking process has been when they're watching stuff, when they're talking to peers. All of that stuff can have an impact that we don't really necessarily know about. But if we can install in them some sort of foundational stuff that we would like them to work towards and that we are going to emulate in our own lives and encourage in them, then we're just giving them like a foundation which feels safe, and it's like that safe base that we're trying to establish so that they can go out and explore all of this stuff. But at the heart of it all, they have this knowledge that they are in control of how they're thinking, feeling, and what they're doing, and that is a really important thing to have at the core of who you are.
And this links directly with somebody's confidence, because once you know that you have this power, that you are able to have this influence over everything, over yourself, over your daily life, you have that influence. That gives you the confidence to try something new, to step out of your comfort zone that maybe you wouldn't normally do. Brilliant.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we spoke previously, you mentioned critical thinking skills. What are they?
Okay, so critical thinking skills are basically curiosity. So it's basically questioning what it is that you're seeing and hearing and experiencing, and trying to come at it from a different point of view, so that you're critiquing your experience and you're critiquing what you see and hear to expand upon your ability to think about it differently. So for very young children, that is simply about curiosity. It's just asking questions. It's just saying, oh, well, what could be going on there? Or even things like with my son, we had this conversation in the car once with my dad, and he was obsessed with the Napoleonic War for some bizarre reason. He loved every aspect of it. He was, set up his soldiers and stuff. And we had this conversation. He must have been about 3 or 4, I think. And he was talking about goodies and baddies. And so my question to him, which my dad laughed at, but it was really important for me to ask him that question, was how do you know who are the goodies and who are the baddies? Mm. And he was like, I don't really know. But it sparked his curiosity, because then he started to think, actually, how do I know that they're the goodies? And I said, do you think that the baddies know that they're baddies, or do you think that they think they're the goodies as well? And he was like, oh, God, I don't know. But the whole point was to get him thinking critically about an assumption that he had made. And that's all it is, really. It's just questioning your assumptions.
Brilliant. And that can then be taken into the playground. And when you've got a child that's being mean, for example, obviously I work with parents when their children are being bullied. So I'm just using that. When a child's being mean, that same child, your son, when you've asked him that question, that exact question, do you think they realise they are bullying? Do you think they realise they're being mean? Because quite often they don't. Quite often it's for some other reason. And that sort of skill, that questioning, can really help our kids look further, and it will really help them. That's great. Okay, so I was going to ask you how you think we can help our own children develop their critical thinking skills. I'm presuming your main answer will be to ask questions.
Yeah, definitely. And that's quite a hard skill sometimes for a parent, because actually what our tendency is to imply in our question an answer that we want them to give. So we might put words into their mouth without realizing that we're doing it, but our own agenda is always in there. So it's actually a real skill for a parent to be able to ask questions without implying an answer. So you are literally just posing a question and waiting for their answer without jumping in with, oh, but of course this is the case, or, but don't you think that as well? Just listen, just ask an open question and listen, and then you can ask more questions, because what you want to do all the time is hand to them the idea that they are able to come to their own conclusions, and that's okay. And they can then work with you to discuss it further, because of course you've got greater knowledge than they have. But what you want to try and avoid, if possible, is bringing your own agenda into that and your own thoughts into it, because otherwise you're just constantly feeding them with your thoughts and not allowing them to explore their own thoughts. So for me, that's questioning is such a skill for parents to be able to do, and then for children, and then to be able to listen to your child's answer without then telling them that they're wrong, or telling them that actually, well, this is how I see it, but having a discussion, an open discussion. And they're so capable of that. And we sort of assume that they aren't, that they can't come up with the answers, that they need to be instructed. But so often they come up with it all on their own. And I was a teacher for quite a long time, and I worked in primary, so I was working all the way from reception to year 6 across the time that I was teaching. And so many times, if a child came up to me as a teacher and said, oh, this has happened, my thing was always, what would you like to do about that? So that immediately they're having to think for themselves, oh, what would I like to do? Rather than just going, right, you deal with it, you're the teacher, you deal with it. And of course, I will support them and do whatever they want in the way of support. But they are so capable of telling you what it is that they need. But we so rarely ask. We just, okay, write it out. But that doesn't give them the opportunity to work it out for themselves. And that's such an important skill for children, and they are really capable of doing it.
Yeah, definitely. And I am such a supporter of this. This is it's a major component in my online program for parents, and because I do honestly believe that this was what made the huge step for my own daughter when she was being bullied and overcoming it. And it's the difference between a child that will be repetitively bullied and one that won't. And that is, because you're empowering them. You are giving them the space to be who they are and to recognise that they do not need to be with you to know what they want to do next. And that is so big when they're in a playground and they're faced with the bully. Rather than, I need my mum, they can step into, what would I like to do about this now? And it might be to go to an adult to seek help, and that obviously that's fine, and that's as it should be. But they've made that decision. They didn't need an adult to tell them, to guide them. And I think we think we are being helpful to our children by giving them the answers, by showing them the way, by telling them what we think. But quite often we're robbing them of their own power.
Yeah.
really harsh to anyone watching, but I'm talking about myself personally as well. You know, I've been in that position where you think that's what a good mum is, giving the answers, showing them how, keeping things easy for them, smoothing things over for them. And that really doesn't help in the long term. It is a plaster on a very open wound. You need to just give them the space and the power to do it. And equally, a massive benefit from doing what you're explaining there, Nova, is actually it takes the pressure off of you as a mum, because you haven't got to have the answers and you haven't got to know what is right for your child all of the time. And my personal experience is that when you hand it over as a joint effort rather than being the sole contributor, they come up with far better solutions than we ever would, far better, and they are more comfortable with them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I absolutely, I love all of that. I think that's fantastic. Okay, so let's look on the slightly negative side now then. So where do you see parents failing in their attempts to help their kids reach their potential and step into their power?
I think the main thing is what we've been talking about, which is that they are taking away the child's ability to solve the situation for themselves by stepping in. And particularly when you're talking about the whole bullying situation, and there are so many parents that I've seen who, when their child is getting bullied, they panic because they desperately, of course, as a parent, you desperately want to take that experience away from your child. You don't want them to be in pain. You don't want them to be coming home crying. It's the worst thing in the world. But at the same time, what then tends to happen is that parents habitually move their child from that, or remove their child from that situation. So they are constantly taking away the learning that child could have. And what happens is that child will go to a new school and they will repeat exactly the same. What hasn't changed is that child's view of themselves. And that's the thing that needs to change. And the only way that will change is to hand back the them. And you can do that, like you said, you can do that.
Oh, you've cut out, Nova, sorry.
Oh, sorry. Am I back again?
Yeah, that's it. The only thing that hasn't changed is the child's view of themselves. That was where it cut out.
Yeah, because the child is
still essentially... it's cut out again. I can see you, but I can't hear you. Right. Let's see if it works now.
Okay. So I was just the trouble is that the child Am I cutting out still?
You are a little bit, but I can still, we'll continue just for a minute, just to see if it will work, because we've had such a great run here. I don't want to lose this.
Sure. Oh, it is going weird. Okay, so the best thing that we can do for our children is improve their view of And the way to do that is to, instead of remove them from a situation, is to give them the tools to deal with the situation once and for all. And when their confidence increases because their self-worth has increased, they are better able to deal with things anyway. You're equipping them to deal with it so that they're not constantly going to find the same situation again and again. And I know that what you want to do is protect them, but what you're doing actually is setting them up for life to repeat the same kind of thought process, because you haven't dealt with the primary way that they're viewing themselves.
Yeah.
And it's such an important thing for us as parents to be able to gift that to your child, to gift them the experience of going through it, because of course, you don't see it in that way. You just want to take them away. But then they become adults who are bullied at work. They become adults who can't stand up for themselves, who can't communicate what they need, because they have still got that same view of themselves being a victim. And that's what you want to change. That's the most empowering thing you can do for your child.
Couldn't agree more. That's exactly what I teach. So yeah, I love that. Okay, so I was also going to mention the whole reaching their potential. We are not talking about the whole pushy parent syndrome of my child needs to be achieving X and receiving this award. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about reaching their potential in well-being, in being happy in life, content, thriving, that sort of thing. It's not about achievements and awards and grades. That's not what although they will all be benefits, consequences of this sort of work anyway. It's just a natural thing. It's a bonus. So, sorry, were you going to say something?
No.
Oh. So as mums, I think we all have the common goal. So this is what we want to head for, is, happy kids that reach their potential, that feel good about life, recognise their own power. So what could you share with us today that if anyone's watching this thinking, okay, great, I want to take action, where can we start? What can we do? There are a few things you can suggest.
Yeah, I think one of the most powerful exercises and the simplest exercise that I do with a lot of kids and adults actually is to, and it sounds a bit trite, but it's the whole idea of pulling out from your day all of the things that have been really great about it. So I encourage parents to have a gratitude board, which is literally just like a pin board, one of those cheap pin board things you can get, and give them a stack of Post-it notes. And for younger children, you can write it down for them, keep it in their bedroom, and then just at the end of the day, just say, what was really great about today? And they will come out with all kinds of different things, because you're not looking, like you said, you're not looking for, well, I got an A in this or blah, blah. And all of those things are fantastic, but you also want to encourage them to pull out, well, I spoke to somebody that I've never spoken to today. And Angela smiled at me across the playground, and normally she's scowling at me. Or anything you like, but get them to pull out as many things as they can. And with children, that turns them around so quickly, it's unbelievable. As adults, that can take us a long time to turn around through things like that, because we're so ingrained in our thought processes. But for children, it's a really easy leap, really easy. So just keep that, because what you're doing, of course, again there, is that you are refocusing them every single day on encouraging their thoughts to be focused on the good things that happened, so that they are not dwelling on the bad things. And so often they will dwell and dwell and dwell on one thing that happened that was not as they wanted it to be, or that felt bad for them. So you're constantly reinforcing, let's concentrate and focus on the good stuff. The bad stuff, we can deal with it. We're not saying it didn't exist. We're not saying it's not important, but we're training your brain and we're training your mind to focus more on the good stuff that happened, because that's a place where you can deal with the bad stuff better.
Love that.
So that's one thing I do. And then another one, which is a little bit more complicated to set up, but again, it's really, really powerful, is that if you have a collection, so what you want to do is explore relationships with your children and how they're feeling about the people that are around them at the moment. And one way to do that is to say, okay, let's go out for a walk, or let's go in the garden, and I want you to find something on the ground, like a stone or a twig or a flower, that makes you think of the people that are in your life. So you might say, okay, let's pick something that makes you think of mummy. So they might pick, hopefully they'll pick something nice, like a flower or something like that. But whatever it is that they pick. And then one for all of the important people in their life and the friends that are surrounding them. And then so make it a fun exercise, and then bring it all home. Get a big piece of paper, and in the middle, you're going to have them pick something that represents them. So they put that in the middle, and then you're going to say, okay, all the things that we've gathered, I want you to place those all around you where it feels good to put them. And they will subconsciously or consciously put them in a place that will be a wealth of information for you now. So you can have a look at where they've placed the things around them, and then you can talk to them and ask them questions about, like, oh, why have you chosen that twig to represent Sam at school? And they might say, well, because Sam's quite hard and he's hard to get to know, so I've chosen something else that's really hard. Or he's really tall, so I chose a tall stick, whatever it is. And then you'll be able to find out a lot of information just from them describing the thing that they've picked. And the other thing that you can do is to look at the placement of where they've put them, because often they will do really interesting things, like they will put them very close to one parent and then maybe another parent. So for example, if they placed so you can't see my hands. If they placed them in the middle and then they had something to represent mummy here and then something to represent daddy that was behind, then you in your mind, you wouldn't necessarily talk to the child about it, but you in your mind would go, I wonder if sometimes I get in the way of their relationship with their father, because I'm in the middle of the two of them constantly. So then you can look at it and think, what do I do that blocks that relationship there? And then you can look at the relationship they've got with their friends and you can say, oh, you've put Sam really far away. And they go, yeah, well, I don't want him too close to me. So then you can start asking, oh, well, why is that? So when you've explored that, the next stage would be, what would you like it to look like instead? So this is how it does look. Now change them for me as to how you would like it to look. And again, without going on forever, you've got then a wealth of information about what they would really like their relationships to look like. And it's so fun. They love doing it and they love talking about it. And for you, you're clocking all of this information that maybe they wouldn't be able to verbalize otherwise. So the gratitude board and the stone exercise, or the natural things exercise, are both really good, solid exercises that will tell you a huge amount about them. One of them will tell you a huge amount, the other one will transform their thinking. So there's like two areas there that are covered by those two really simple exercises. So that would be my suggestion for what you could do.
Brilliant. I love that. And they're things that we can use right now. It's not like you need to go and buy supplies or wait or have hours on your hands. It can be a couple of minutes if that's what you've got, or if it's the school holidays, make it into an afternoon's activity. It can be as long or as short as you need it to be. Brilliant.
Definitely.
Thank you so much for your help. We are going to put all of Nova's details below, so if you want to contact her further, if you want to know a little bit more about what she does, or if you want to work with her, then her details will be below. So it's a click of a button and you're in contact with her. Thank you very much, Nova.
Absolute pleasure. Thank you.